It is. Hey, we're live.
Yeah, for good or bad, but
So yeah, so we just spent like a half hour trying to get the video working on the thing.
you hear me okay? I mean, we're live. I guess it
I
doesn't
can hear
matter
you on the
now.
cell phone
So
fine. I'm assuming people they'll
yeah,
tell us.
there might be a slight echo for whoever is like listening to it, but okay.
Modern technology, dude. This is wonderful. We're gonna spend like an hour to have a 5 minute conversation.
Yeah.
Uh,
So you've been pumping out a whole bunch of blog posts.
oh yeah.
The last one I didn't look at. I think it was the last one. You were talking about JSON. I was like, ill. I don't really care about parsing JSON or anything that has to do with JSON.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
I think it's always necessary in most people's line of work if they're doing a website or well any connected application. But I guess what I'm interested in is this whole saga or journey of you and functional programming. Can you do you with humility? Do you think that you've arrived in your journey of really understanding this paradigm and being able to deliver and help companies?
That's a good question. Yeah, but I'm riding a different train than you may think I'm riding. So yeah, computers bored to hell out of me. I just be honest with you. Okay, I mean I love math, I love the logic, I love functional programming with a passion, or I wouldn't be doing this. But to me, the really interesting thing is how any programmer sits down at the computer and actually tries to solve a problem. To me, that's fascinating. The interaction between the person and the tech. That's the reason I keep coming back. So yeah, that journey. Yeah, I think I've gotten where I want to go, and I think I have something worth sharing. So that's what I've been doing the blogging about everything.
Hmm.
Now, as far as the pure functional stuff and the end of FP and type classes and all the rest of that, no, I mean I know it intellectually, academically. I've coded some with it here and there. My recurring problem with functional programming is that I code a little bit, then go away, then come back cold. And when I'm coding all the time in F sharp, I get very fluid in it. I just the ideas come out from my mind and into the code. Things are working fine, but I rarely code that way. Most of the time I'm interrupted. I get a half hour in here and I go somewhere else and another little bit in here or there. And so to me, the work pattern of programming is the reason I'm blogging. It's the reason I've got the JSON and CGI and other stuff is to sort of explore the whole idea of, well, how do you code in a fashion when you're not full time head in the code? You have to come in and out. Because it's a different work pattern for that, I think.
I've been experimenting with different ways of building out features, and so like, how do I say this? I've been in a couple shops where it's weird. I hear my echo. I'm getting distracted. I've been in a couple shops where basically develop some developers weren't up to par in what we needed to do, but my belief system is that they were able to disguise their lack of competency because we were all working we all had our hands in the cookie jar. We were all working inside the same monolith. And so it was very easy for them to say, no, I wasn't able to get this done yesterday because I had merge issues because so and so was in the same file, right? And there's been a couple times on Greenfield projects where I've tried to influence or remove that particular scenario by saying, well, why don't we kind of do vertical slices such that we create a library or a suite of libraries that will model a specific feature. And then we can have a better understanding. Well, we can hopefully have less conflicts with other developers, and we can theoretically be put in our own sandbox. And also, we could take advantage of static analysis tools so that decisions can be made based on the quality of specific libraries and certain things that we can identify that we can trace to developers. Apparently, I didn't articulate that well because all they heard was we can make decisions and trace to developers. Yeah, and so they were
No, no.
very concerned about traceability of the code metrics or static analysis reports that could be traced directly to a sole developer, and they didn't like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the two topics are related. So I'm just going to assume that you're on a team and you know what you're doing, whatever environment you're in, but there's some people there you're kind of concerned about. I think I'm repeating what you're saying, right? People you're concerned about, and you're trying to sort of break the workflow pattern up such that the team is more successful, right? Um,
It's kind of political as well. So the scenario is usually I get brought in as a consultant, and I feel this pressure to hit the ground running. And my belief system is that the people that are paying me twice as much, they don't want to hear excuses about why I wasn't able to get things done or why I spent my wheels with merging and all the other stuff. And so I want to be able to learn from past experiences. And basically, I do well when I'm in my own sandbox, or maybe if it's okay for me to say, when I'm working within a bounded context with nobody else interfering. And there's really a separation of concerns. And I think that would work, but I've struggled because people abuse the term team and this whole team mantra. And no, we're all responsible and we're all going to have our hands on individual features. And that's the conflict that I run into, is trying to be productive, trying to deliver on what I say I'm going to deliver without having any excuses. And also being able to, the political side is really being able to convey that some developers are struggling and they're not being able to pull their load. And I know that sounds very concerning or political, but the thing is there's human beings that are writing a paycheck, and I
right.
don't think it's fair that the majority of their paycheck is being consumed debugging.
There's
Um,
a I don't know if we may have spoken to this before. There's an old terrible thing people say about Microsoft consultants, and the terrible thing they say is that their brain's on a stick. And the reason they say that is because the consultants, it used to be in the past, felt like just what you said. I'm hired to be a smart person on a stick here. And, you stick me in a program and I do a good job and I can't be responsible for the other people. Here I am. Here's my brain on the stick. You paid for it, right? And that's good if you want that as a client. You really have to ask yourself, is that your goal, to have one person really kicking ass and other people, him having to drag them along or whatever? I mean, quite frankly, I'd just get rid of the other people, keep the one or two people that know what they're doing. Would be the first thing I would do as a client, right? If I were concerned about succeeding. But the question you need to ask yourself coming as a consultant is, are you being paid to personally succeed? Are you being paid for the client's project to be finished? Or are you being paid to train that team so they actually deliver with the client? I mean, there's three different goals, and they're not necessarily the same goal, right?
well, for one example, I know for a fact that that team was not interested in me trying to help them.
Well, you're down to two now, so now you me personally succeeding. This is good.
And so
I used to find people would hire me to do a good job and train their team, and there would always be this would be the conflict, right? Hey, come on in. We need to learn C++, we need to learn whatever, and we need you to deliver blah blah blah. It's like, well, like I can do one or the other, but you might not get both of these.
Yeah. So why? Yeah, it's a deep. It it's deep. Like I feel like there's more emphasis on the team than there is on the actual budget. And again, like from my experience, and I'm pretty confident, the experience of probably 99% of folks, the budget's consumed by troubleshooting and a lack of automated tests or automated checklists at the forefront. And I really want to expose that. I want to make a dent. I want to make a difference. But I guess the industry is not interested in that. The industry is interested in, oh, software is complicated, which it is. But there's things that we can do to encourage being able to deliver at a lower cost and with higher quality, at least when it comes to like nailing down the business requirements, the implementation of that. I really do believe that. So
there's a trust thing that goes on no matter what you're doing that's very, very difficult to work through sometimes. I used to work being a tech lead. I was a PM, I coded, and I ran had a team. We would drop in someplace, we'd work for a few months and leave. The client was paying us to deliver value. They didn't care how we worked inside our team. They just wanted X done on time, on budget, because we were charging a lot of money. In that scenario, I had two rules. First of all, no egos inside the team. You can't do this, that's fine. We'll either train you or I'll pick up the slack or whatever. And then the second rule is whatever we promise, we deliver. And those two kind of go together. But if one of those falls apart, right? If you're on the hook for delivering features, but you can't trust the people next to you to be honest about their weaknesses, for you to help each other out, you got problems, dude. I mean, it's either on your own or not. At that point, it's kind of a fish or cut bait situation. Yeah. Enough of that. After a while, it's like, no, screw this. I don't do it anymore. That would be the reasonable thing to do.
Yeah. So now I'm starting a new position, and like I'm like supposed to be. I was hired as an architect, which is another topic because I've been in positions where I was hired as an architect, but then I learned that I'm more of a support person to the consumers of the framework that they sell. But anyway, I was going to say that. So I'm trying really hard to influence the project by encouraging, in this case, functional programming. But I have a feeling that people that are the recruiting part of the company or business, should I say, I have a feeling that they're probably not going to like the fact that it's going to be challenging to find someone that knows F# and mobile development. So
there was a post on the F# Reddit group a week or two ago, but I don't know if you saw it. It was a guy that said he tried to introduce F# to his team and it kind of all fell apart.
I didn't see that reading,
but yeah, it was really hard. But he was 5 or 6 paragraphs, and he'd obviously cared about F#, cared about quality. He'd spend a lot of effort building up sort of a test framework to show how this stuff would work and everything. And in my opinion, what I think he did, he kind of got too far ahead of everybody else. And then his boss came by one day and said, "What the heck is this stuff?" And that just shot the whole thing down. So yeah, it's when you want to introduce change like F# and all that, you have to figure out how to do the baby step thing, right?
Well, or I could have people that are already competent.
Yes, one of the other.
Probably the difference is he probably had a whole bunch of OOP developers. I'm trying to take this collar off my dog. He probably had a whole bunch of OOP developers, and that's not going to work. No. It's not. They have to have the urge and want to, and not be told to.
There was I went through a lot of pain going from like C++, C# over to F#. It was just a ton of pain, man. It was had to think about the way code worked in a completely different fashion, how to put together code. It was not an easy experience. I can't imagine being under the gun, maybe not caring that much about programming, just kind of wanting to do my job, then having some bozo come in and tell me I got to do things a whole different way. That'd be. I don't think I'd like that at all. Really, you have to pay me a lot for that, I think.
Well, it's the same thought mentality when it comes to unit tests. People don't like the fact that they're being told that they now have to have unit tests at the end of a sprint. And I've seen people really try hard to cheat the system. Like they just write a whole bunch of code that will always pass because they have no asserts. And But anyways, I think it's the same
Yeah,
paradigm.
I had some people I worked with a few months back. I was just emailing the guy, and we were talking about tests, and he was like, once you see PDD work, once you see test fails, code changes, test passes, and the first time it's like, oh, it's just a stupid way of just doing tests. Yeah, it doesn't take long, an hour, 2 hours. Pretty soon you're like finding bugs you wouldn't find before. And after a day or two, it's like, why the hell would I ever want to do this any other way? It just doesn't make any sense. But it takes a little bit of faith to actually go through a day or two to figure it out, I think.
No, I don't know. I
You're
really like
it. You're sounding kind of negative, Scott. Like,
yeah.
Oh, gee, yeah.
Because it's like, imagine like your whole professional career from the early start being told that you're not good enough and you don't have this experience, you don't have that experience. So you spend like 12, 13, 15 years building up that the muscle memory of how to build systems using a certain type of like workflow or recipe. And then two, like, you develop certain techniques and you understand a certain way of, if I could say, engineering. And then when you really are ready to apply it and say, yo, I finally, I think I got it. And I think I have a better understanding compared to most people how to put together reliable systems. You run into the human factor where they don't really care that much. And it becomes more about the human factor and people's feelings instead of what we're actually being paid for. So, like, yeah, I'm being negative because as I continue to grow in my career, I keep getting confronted with the human
keep
factor.
Figuring out people suck.
I keep realizing that this entire arsenal that I spent 15 years trying to build up, that they told me I needed in order for me to get hired and get past the interview, they're no longer interested anymore. So
no, it was. This is. I took piano when I was a kid, 12 years, from 6 to 18, and I was a classical pianist. Busted butt, Chopin. Even played, the military Polonaise, if you know what that is. Played some complex stuff. Enjoyed it, loved it. But then I dropped it and picked up music later in life, and it was like, well, heck, none of this other stuff matters. I mean, who wants Chopin? Nobody asked you to play Chopin. I think programming is very similar. At least my experience has been very similar to that. If you move amongst clients, it's like playing in a band. They're going to ask for all kinds of weird stuff that makes no sense to you whatsoever. And you're going to go, okay, I think I can do it that way. Let's give it a shot. And the more you kind of wed yourself to one kind of way of doing things, even functional programming, as much as I love it, more disappointment you're going to be in. It's just...
one of the things that attracted me to functional programming is the fact that if I got paid to get a job in it, then it was a higher probability I would work with people that actually care about programming.
Yes. Let me ask you this. You think you could, something I've wondered about, do you do C#? Do you do OO stuff? I've always wondered what my OO code would look like now that I've done a bunch of FP stuff.
That's my day job. I just got done coding 2 hours ago.
So do you use constant classes with constant methods and then try to make everything immutable?
So if I'm doing Greenfield, then I have static classes and static methods everywhere. That's Greenfield. When I'm inheriting someone's work, no.
Yeah.
What I use a lot of, because it still belongs to a static method, is I use a lot of method extensions in C#. And I take a lot of pleasure in writing elegant code that leverages. People never knew that a string could do so many things, or an integer could do so many things, right? But that's fresh code. When I'm inheriting something and I just have to make it work, then the only thing that really changes since I've learned functional programming is I have this OCD where I have to make sure everything is in columns. So I'll have var and then whatever name, equals, and if I'm declaring like 3 different variables with emphasis
Yeah,
on
okay.
variables, then everything has to line up.
Yeah.
It has to look like the editor looks like a table. So
I
that's
got
what
that bad.
yeah, that's what I brought over from F Sharp.
Yeah, C++ gave me that, and it also gave me the Hungarian prefixing, which I know nobody uses, and it's supposed to be bad, but I mean,
You still do that?
If I don't catch myself, I do.
So what
I'm trying to stop. I'm in a 12-step program, but it's not working out so well.
Well, okay, but you said that's for object-oriented programming. You don't do that in F Sharp.
I
hope not.
Mostly no. It's interesting. One of the questions my friend Bob had when we were coding last year was how much the type system in F Sharp would prevent us from, doing truly polymorphic functions. And it's weird because I start off typed and then go to untyped. So I will, if I'm really confused, which isn't unusual, I might would, some really gnarly problem, I might would go to Hungarian prefixing, strongly type everything up for 15, 20 minutes, get it working, and pull the types off and see if I can genericize the function after that. I do whatever it takes to make things simple, right? And so some things I look at and I go, I can get this in a minute or two, but why do I want to mess with that right now? So I try to move the complexity out of my brain so I don't have to worry about it anymore.
Oh no, I think
if that means using, so yeah, the answer is yes, every now and then, but it's rare because the nice thing about functional decomp, you don't really end up with those gnarly problems. I had a lot of those gnarly problems when I was getting started with functional programming, but now usually everything's sorted out by the time I get to the inside of the onion, and it's just straightforward transforms. It's almost like wiring a radio. This wire goes here, this wire goes there, all these wires go together. It works. I'm done. Pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm experimenting with a new template for solutions where like it's kind of like I don't know what I have, like 5 steps. So for each domain, from the UI logic all the way to the automated tests. Let me look at this.
Oh my God.
I basically have a folder that represents each domain. And I have 6 projects for each domain that's encapsulated in its own folder. And the first one is a specification library that has all the major function signatures for the operations that are exposed publicly, along with any of the types that are going to be used, such as records and stuff like that. Then I have my UI logic library, and then I have my actual domain that has the workflows that ultimately emit a list of domain events. Then I have my event handlers as a separate library, and then I have my data store as another library, and then I have my tests. And so this solution
and I
so
built
far,
this entire thing with bubblegum, and if it works, the important thing, it makes sense to me because they're different domains, right? You're talking about the spec of the program, they're conceptual layers almost, right?
Yeah, and it's something that I'm experimenting with. Hence, earlier I brought up like trying to have like a sandbox for each developer, because I think if each developer has their own sandbox, then perhaps development is scalable, where perhaps you can throw more developers at a system or at a software project, as long as there's features to be implemented and not an existing feature that just requires a lot of work. I don't think that scales with adding more developers. But if you had a developer per feature and you pretty much approach that feature as its own isolated sandbox, then this is what I'm kind of experimenting with.
It sounds, I'm interested to see how it comes. Sounds interesting. Please tell me how it goes. I don't know if you can engineer your way out of. I don't know if you can engineer your way out of the problem you're talking about with developer performance. If you've got somebody who doesn't get it, no amount of folders is going to fix that. You're just going to sit your seat down next to this guy. Okay, Jim, here we go. We're gonna figure this out and just do like we did in the Marines. You pick them up, and you drag them wherever you're going, because we're all getting there at the same time. If I've got to drag you, that's the way we're doing it.
The thought process is other developers, they're delivering because they're pretty much responsible for a feature. You don't have all these files inside of one library or how do I say this? You don't have 4 features in one library. right? With
Yeah.
for the developers, and they're all like stumbling over each other trying to get it done. That's what I'm trying to like avoid. So I'm experimenting.
So I'll kind of tell you my pattern. I don't know if have you used Gherkin Selenium to do ATD automated
I thought
testing?
Gherkin is the same thing that they use for SpecFlow with C Sharp.
Yes, it's a version of SpecFlow.
Yeah.
What I've done is I did this whole book on organizing project information, and as part of that, you sort of come up with your high level feature list that your whatever your building should support, and that actually breaks off into Gherkin feature files because you want to. This gets back to your comment. You want to test those features, develop those features, and those features tie back to a bunch of other stuff you come up with during your business conversation. So I have an automated process where you discover the features, you discover the constraints that go with the features, and that generates the automated feature files. What I thought about doing and what I have in place is actually doing workflow from the features because you can do that event storming that Scott talks about, and then you could actually get to the point where you actually start generating more and more stuff downstream. It's stuff like you're talking about. What I've done bottom up is end up breaking those different features up into compilation units with shared type files, and then the type file, of course, everything's version controlled. And then the developer we all use the common type system, but the developer is only responsible for using those types in a certain feature. And I don't lock the feature down because I don't know what, we're developing the type system as we go along. I don't have sort of a master plan before we start. I can just tell what the features are, kind of what the flow is.
Do you not struggle implementing Onion architecture within the actual with the actual team? Like they don't know what that is usually, and they're going to automatically like couple their business logic with side effects. No.
Yeah, it's mob. You've got a mob. If you're moving to FP, you got a mob. I just don't. OO is bad enough. If I'm teaching TDD in an OO environment, we have to mob for a while to get the hang of it, but it comes across. A functional, especially pure functional with Onion, you really need to walk through it for a while and get the hang of it. The thing is, you just can't spot all the different usages of the type until actually the feature programmer gets in. Thank God for version control. But yeah, you've got to work together. I don't think I could just throw a feature and like a blank type at somebody that had maybe had a learn F# in 2-day course or something. That's not going to work.
Hmm.
No matter how you do the architecture, I think you're going to be stuck. The thing is, and maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But this is my experience. Is that programming has so many tiny little details, this little piece here, there, whatever, the mob programming where you all get together and you channel through one terminal and you discuss the code as you write several features, that drives out all of these tiny little decisions that you just naturally gloss over and wouldn't think about any other way. I just don't think there's any way around it by controlling types or anything else. You have to come to an agreement on how to do version control, how to do labeling, all kinds of crap, where to put the tests at. It goes on and on.
Or you could try to mess around like I'm messing around with and like just have responsible libraries.
Yes.
And hope that if it makes sense to me, it makes sense to other developers, which it probably won't.
But remember this. The reason I told you this, I get to tell boring stories now. Remember I told the boring story about the guy on Reddit who did all the work, and then his boss came in and So yeah, you can do that. It's fun. Have a hoot with that, right? But you better have some kind of plan how to bring the people along with you, aside from coming in with a big stick and saying, "Look, guys, this is my master plan. I'm going to hit you with this stick unless you." And that's kind of a hard way to sort of help people.
Well, okay, so this is related. What's the role of an architect then? Should an architect not lay down the foundation and place constraints that will encourage the development of features or overall software?
Look, I've been an architect for years. I've led architecture teams, been on enterprise architecture teams. and I think it's a crock of crap. So I mean, it's just is. It's architect. Too many times, architect is the guy who got so smart we don't want to work with him, so we gave him like a promotion, and he does UML diagrams all day, and he comes by once a month, and we smile at him and take his diagrams and ignore them, right? You got to have your head in the code. Google did not have an architect role. They went for a lead role, and then when they got really big, they went to an uber lead, which would be sort of a lead, and he was responsible for the type of things you would consider architecture, like patterns, security, all sorts of patterns. Architecture in general, in my opinion, is how little pieces fit into bigger pieces, and that is based on a bunch of other stuff, patterns of behavior, various supplementals. You can get in a list of stuff, but at the end of the day, architecture should talk about how pieces fit together.
Okay.
So really, everybody codes as an architect, right? It's just that we don't get to tell other people stuff. We just code on our own.
Well, I mean, I thought one of their roles is to lay down the foundation, and that foundation is structured such that it encourages a certain way of building the system based on constraints that are there. I could be wrong. I mean, I'm wrong.
No.
Things,
I'm not saying you're wrong. Okay. Hey, I get friends that write book on architecture. I'm sure if you opened the book up, probably page 1 would say something very similar to what you just said. I'm just saying, in the real world, unless you have your head in the team and the code, it's very, very easy to get to this sort of detached ivory tower situation where, yes, you are making those decisions, but no, they're not valuable. In fact, you're probably creating more obstacles than you are helping out, and people realize that, and then it gets even more frustrating than just doing this kind of stuff we're doing ourselves on the side, because then they're paying you to create all this stuff that nobody's using it, or they're using it, they're unhappy with it. So it's the architect job to be done well, in my opinion, needs to be done as it were uber lead or lead job.
Okay.
Not according to the way the book says. I've never seen that work well. I've seen a lot of really smart guys set up a lot of frameworks. I've worked with a lot of frameworks, including COM. Oh God, who wouldn't love virtual function tables? But most of the time, there's just a Charlie Foxtrot. I tell you why, and this gets back to my XP thing. I'm doing this whole blog thing. Structure breeds structure. So once you put a class in place or function in place or a model, whatever, your folder thing you got, once you stick something in there, human nature wants to put something else in there, something that goes with it. It's, I've got to have error handling. I've got to have whatever. And it seems like a good idea. Why isn't it? Who wouldn't want to do error handling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you put that in there, and then, well, there's no feedback because, okay.
I'm listening.
Okay, so you put the error handling in, and there's nobody says it's bad. So, hey, it must be good. Why not put telemetry in there? Well, if you're only adding structure due to some sort of aesthetic you read about in a book, or because you want to impress your girlfriend or whatever, there's no feedback. There's no limit to that. It's just whatever you think is cool. And you put a couple of architects together, it's whatever both of them think are cool. And this tends to be sort of self-generating. Whereas if you look at it from the extreme programming standpoint, it's like every freaking byte in that code has to do something useful right now. If it doesn't, it's not in there. And that sucks because it means you can't add in Whizbang 4.0 or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it prevents you from creating these architectural conceits that may not be useful to other folks and may actually get in there. I mean, I've worked with teams where you couldn't do anything without generating like one class and 8 different interfaces, for instance. It's like, holy shit, who the hell needs 8 different interfaces for one class? Well, we've got to serialize it, and it's like every problem really has this pattern. Are you sure? And of course it doesn't.
I can almost guarantee those were Java developers.
A C# shop, dude. Fall down. But yeah, Java's just as bad. So yeah, the problem with architecture as a standalone thing is that unless you're plugged into the value stream, there's no you can't argue with me one way or another that one architecture is better or worse than another. There are guys right now reading articles on how to set up your own cloud system to support 1 billion transactions a second. And they're like, oh boy, we got to put this in our code. They may have 10 users. They may never have any users at all.
But they get to put it on their resume and then get a job that pays $20 more an hour.
Yes. A job pays $20 more an hour at a place who also doesn't have 1 billion. So it sort of continues on. It's a good money if you can get it, but at some point you feel ethically constrained to remind the clients that maybe you're building out a system you never use.
That makes sense.
And I'm not saying it's all bad. I'm just saying that it is an ethics question. I believe, and now that I think that the field is coming around to my way of view, is that as coders, we actually face a whole bunch of ethical dilemmas when we code. And I wish that weren't the case. It was fun back in the day with Donkey Kong and stuff, but nowadays it's kind of like everything we do when we write telemetry on apps, when we write dark patterns and UIs, everything we do, we really need to take a sort of gut check and say, is this sort of fit my moral standards?
It's kind of blurry. It's the mobile apps on my phone. I'm like, why do you need to know my location? Like there's a lot of information that they want. Like, why do you need to turn on my microphone? I'm not calling anybody. Like,
Yeah.
So I get it. The whole Volkswagen thing and Snowden.
Some people are, what you're seeing a lot of, I'm sure you've read about it, with people who will sell an app or sell a plugin or a WordPress plugin or Google Chrome, whatever, to instrument the hell out of it, put a lot of telemetry in it, and then they sell off to a bunch of Russian mafia guys or whatever. And it was fine when you were trusting them with your microphone and where you were and all that stuff, but all of a sudden now you got people overseas knowing that you're at the grocery store. It's like, yeah, it can get in a bad place pretty quickly.
Yeah. I'm seeing it. I feel like this whole conversation, like, software is still complex, and there still isn't like a certain way of taming the beast or taming complexity. And yeah, you're like, Scott, you sound kind of down. I'm like, yeah, it's like I'm about to start a brand new like greenfield project, and I feel like I don't have control even before I start it. So I don't know. I'll man up. But
you want to do this in F#, but you don't have permission yet to do that, right?
I wouldn't. Well, let me try to say this a different way. I want to do it in a way that encourages a higher success. I want to do it in a way that encourages a higher probability of success.
Okay,
and so
that's reasonable.
F# by default parameters are generic, which means that you don't have to do the ceremony to make things generic. Things typically you don't have to worry about nullables or null reference exception.
Okay. Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I got a 5-minute warning here.
Okay.
So I wanted to provide you. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did want to tell you something I found useful for people who want to make a safer environment, like you're talking about, is trying to narrow the scope. Right. So a lot of times, F#, 10 people. No, well, I really want 3 people that I handpick, and I want to narrow. A lot of times the client cannot be convinced to make a technology change, but they can be convinced to have a tightly scoped experiment, which kind of amounts to the same thing, because you get to do the tech stuff you want to do just with a smaller team, which frankly would probably do a better job of it anyway.
I'll consider that. Sounds good.
I get that a lot. Yeah, the thing I run into as a tech coach is I'll describe perfect situation X. Hey, you guys need to do TDD. You need to, or version control would be nice. How about that, right? And immediately they go, "Oh my God, we got 500 programmers. We can't do." So then you have to know, wait a minute. I just want like 6 guys, or we just scope it. At some tight point, you can find a spot where they're going, well, certainly you can't be upset with 2 people doing blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, yeah, I guess that does make sense. And that's where you're where your leverage points at. That's where you want to move in and try to make a change.
Okay. I'll do that. So
I want to hear how it goes. You've been looking for these guys. Have you engaged fully yet?
No, now I'm starting to see a lot of F# work. Like someone reached out to me yesterday, said it was like an oil and gas company, and they're like, "Hey, we saw you applied, but this was like a couple months ago. But we're looking for F# developer, and let's talk." I'm like, just accepted an offer, but okay, let's talk anyway. Sure, I want to help out any way I can. So I think it's starting to open up some, which is a good thing. So, yeah.
Whatever I can do to help the community out, it's probably, in my mind, it's probably one of the best things Microsoft ever did was F#. It's a great environment. It's easy to pick up as an OO guy. You can learn as you go. I can organize the code any number of dozens of different ways that are all useful. It's cool stuff.
Yeah. So next up is Haskell, but I appreciate you hopping online with me. I'm sorry that we killed like half an hour trying to figure out how to get my microphone to work.
No problemo, man. It's been fun. I'd like to do it again sometime.
Yeah, now I just got to test to see if my audio is actually coming in when I watch the video. So
if not, you can add your own like audio later. Like look at one of those Japanese movies, like the dinosaur's too big. Run for your life.
I'm gonna have to edit that part out. Yeah, likewise, Daniel. Thanks again.
See ya. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. I'm gonna hit and stop broadcast.